Okay, let's unpack this. We've got some really interesting and maybe a little concerning source material you've shared for this deep dive.
Absolutely. And it came with that personal note, didn't it? Really highlights how this stuff isn't just theoretical.
Exactly. It feels, relevant. So our mission today is to really get into this specific material you sent over.
Right. We're focusing on what it says about two chemicals, dibutylphthalate, DBP, and bisphenol AF, or BPAF.
Yeah, what are they? How do these documents say they might harm sperm? And crucially, why should you care?
Think of it as us doing the legwork, getting you the key takeaways from this complex info,
All right, let's start where the material does the main problem it brings up.
which is basically that chemicals in really common everyday stuff,
Right.
specifically this DVP and BPAF, are described as potentially damaging sperm health.
Okay, so let's meet them. DBP first. What is it?
Well, the info you shared identifies it as a plastic softener, makes plastics flexible.
Okay, so where would you find that?
Uh, Surprisingly common places, apparently. Nail polish is mentioned, food packaging, even some medical tubing.
Wow. And exposure. How does that happen according to the sources?
Seems like through eating food from certain packaging, maybe breathing it in, or just touching products that contain it.
Okay. And the other one? BPAF.
Right, BPAF. It's chemically related to BPA, which more people might know about.
Oh.
Used in plastics, electronics.
Uh,
Oh, and receipt paper is mentioned specifically.
that seat paper, huh?
Yeah. And get this, the material points out it's sometimes used as a safer substitute for BPA.
Safer in quotes,
Right.
because the sources still say it causes problems.
Exactly. That's the implication.
Hmm.
Exposure routes seems similar: food, air, touching it.
Okay, so we know what they are, where they might be, but the big question the sources tackle is how they might be affecting sperm.
Right. The documents seem to lay out three main ways this might happen.
Which are?
Okay, first, they suggest interference with hormones. Second, generating these things called reactive oxygen species, ROS. And third, directly damaging the sperm's DNA.
And where does this damage mostly happen?
The material really emphasizes the epididymis. That's that crucial tube where sperm mature, where they learn to swim and get ready for fertilization.
Got it. So let's break down DBP's effects first. Based on this material, hormones.
Yeah, the sources specifically mention DBP potentially reducing testosterone.
And testosterone is vital for sperm development, right?
Yeah, absolutely essential. So less testosterone could mean, well, weaker sperm is the idea presented.
Okay, what else for DBP?
Oxidative stress. The documents say DBP generates those ROS molecules.
The tiny wrecking balls. I remember that analogy from the source.
Yeah, quite vivid, isn't it?
Yeah.
These ROS apparently attack the sperm, potentially making them less able to swim or fertilize an egg.
And DNA damage.
That too. The material suggests these ROS from DBP can actually harm the sperm's DNA, like scribbling on an instruction manual, as one source put it.
Wow. Any specifics on that?
Yes, actually. The sources cite studies where DBP levels found in some men's semen. They specifically mention 6 milliamins.
6 m. Okay.
That level was apparently shown to cause DNA damage and hurt sperm performance in lab tests.
That's concerning. That it's a level actually found in people.
It does make it seem less theoretical, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So putting it together for DBP, the sources indicate it makes it harder for sperm to move right and prepare for fertilization in the epididymis.
Which could lead to fertility issues. Makes sense.
Yeah, that's the connection the material makes.
Okay, now let's switch to BPAF. How does the picture the sources paint compare? Similar problems.
Similar in some ways. Hormone disruption is mentioned again, but for BPAF, the sources describe it as mimicking estrogen.
So different hormone pathway disruption.
Seems so. Which can mess up the hormonal balance needed for healthy sperm and maybe affect testosterone too.
And oxidative stress, the
Yeah.
ROS.
Yep, that's mentioned for BPAF too. Like DBP, it seems to create ROS that damage sperm while they're maturing in that epididymis stage.
Okay.
Could stop them developing properly.
So DNA damage as well.
Yes. The sources say BPAF causes sperm DNA to get oxidized by ROS, leading to damage. Again, lab tests on human sperm and animal studies are mentioned that seem to show this weakened sperm.
Okay, so far, sounds quite similar to DBP's effects described in the material. Is there a key difference highlighted?
There is, actually. The material points out that BPAF, unlike DBP, is also described as potentially reducing the number of sperm produced.
Oh, okay, so not just damaged sperm, but potentially fewer sperm overall.
That's what the sources suggest, yeah. So it could be a double whammy, potentially making conception harder, according to this info.
Let's dig into that DNA damage aspect a bit more. DNA base oxidation. Sounds technical.
It does, but the source analogies help. Think of DNA as the sperm's instruction book, right? All the genetic info needed for it to work and for a healthy baby.
Got it. Instruction book.
And DNA-based oxidation, according to these documents, is when those ROS molecules attack the DNA building blocks, the letters. They mention guanine changing into something called 8-OHDG as an example.
Like tearing or smudging pages in the book.
Exactly that analogy. That's how the source puts it.
And why is that specific type of damage so bad for sperm?
Well, this damage, happening in the epididymis, seems to have big consequences based on the material. Sperm with oxidized DNA might struggle to swim, struggle to fertilize.
Okay.
And beyond that, the sources suggest damaged DNA could potentially lead to issues like miscarriage or problems with embryo development later on.
Serious stuff.
And, though apparently rare, the sources mention a theoretical risk of passing small genetic errors to the baby.
And why are sperm highlighted as being so vulnerable here?
The documents seem to suggest two main things. First, sperm cells apparently don't have great DNA repair kits compared to other cells.
Ah, okay. They can't fix the smudged pages easily.
Kinda, yeah. And second, their structure is described as delicate, making them sensitive targets for these ROS generated by chemicals like DBP and BPAF.
So let's tie this all back to the why this matters angle from the source. These aren't rare chemicals, right?
Not at all. The sources really stress they're in everyday products. And importantly, they can apparently build up in the body, including in semen.
Right, remembering that 6 IM DBP level mentioned found in actual semen samples.
Exactly. And the lab tests with BPAF, it's just the exposure isn't just hypothetical. The levels might be relevant.
And the potential fertility impact described is significant.
It is. The core concern raised is clear. Damaged sperm, bad DNA, poor swimming, maybe lower counts with BPAF can make getting pregnant harder or potentially cause pregnancy complications. That's the takeaway from the sources.
Now, the material didn't just focus on the problems, did it? It mentioned potential protection.
Yes, it did touch on that. It brings up the idea that taking antioxidants like vitamin C or maybe specialized supplements could help.
How'd that work?
Well, the thinking, based on studies mentioned involving DBP and BPAF, is that antioxidants might help neutralize some of those damaging ROS molecules, sort of like providing a buffer for the sperm.
Interesting. Okay, so let's do a quick recap of what we've pulled from this source material.
Sounds good.
We've got DBP and BPAF found in common stuff like plastics. The sources discuss them potentially harming sperm in a few key ways, messing with hormones, creating damaging ROS, and causing specific DNA damage, this DNA-based oxidation, especially as sperm mature in the epididymis.
Right. And this damage, according to the material, can lead to weaker sperm, maybe fewer sperm with BPAF, and ultimately challenges with fertility. Avoiding the chemicals and maybe using antioxidants are mentioned as potential ways to help.
And for anyone listening who wants to really dig into the studies and details behind this, the source material itself pointed towards a specific resource.
That's right. It mentioned www.berkeleycenter.com for more information.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about all these invisible chemicals sort of floating around in our daily lives.
Yeah, and how potentially vulnerable some really crucial parts of our biology, like sperm development, might be to them. Makes you look at a simple plastic bottle or receipt a bit differently.
It certainly does. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.